are some forms on the shelf near the door to give to the manager. Mr. Manager, do we have folks who would like to talk to the board this afternoon?
Yes, sir. First speaker is Joe Mikola, and he wants to talk about natural gas for the Commons Pool.
If it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to defer my comments until the subject comes up as an agenda item.
Any objections?
No.
So ordered?
No.
Next, please.
Okay, George Huskamp, and landscape maintenance and Gateway Boulevard.
Good afternoon, board, and all those concerned. I'm here to express my grave disappointment and concern about the landscape maintenance on Gateway Boulevard. I've lived here for a little over 17 years now, which probably exceeds some of the people around here. And I've noticed a steady decline, mostly in the last 3 to 5 years, in the appearance of Gateway Boulevard. Let me give you some examples. There was some sewer work done about 2 or 3 months ago, and the silt fence that was used to border one of the cuts is still up. Just trash. And I would think that somewhere along the line, somebody would walk by and say, hey, we ought to do something about that. Next thing is that it looks like every time the Mainscape puts down pine straw, it increases by about 25%. There are lots of areas along Gateway Boulevard where trees have been cut down, and sometimes the tree was cut low enough so that Mainscape, in their infinite ability to make things look good, piled up pine straw until it covered the stump. That's not the way things are supposed to be done to have something that really looks good. There's other areas where the stump has been cut low enough, but the area is still there. It's still filled with pine straw. Nothing's been done to take out any stump or anything that might be there. And in the contract with Mainscape, you will notice if you read it that they are responsible under that contract for fixing any problems that come up within the grass area, or if something big, like you take out a tree, then you put grass there. And all we have is pine straw. But the one that really frosts my toes, I'm trying to be nicer. It's hard, just give me a shake. The one that really frosts me is approximately opposite the office building where the banks used to be. There is a place, the drainage ditch runs along the side of the road, and there are 2 trees. At one spot, there's 2 trees about 4 feet from the center line of the ditch on both sides. And Mainscape, the last time they put pine straw down, put it so solid across the whole drainage ditch, so that it backs the water up. It's backed during the rainy season. It backs up the water, and just recently too, backs up the water 125 feet up the road. And of course, it sits there because it's doesn't drain immediately, kills all the grass. I expect the next time if they do the same things, it'll be pine straw in the total thing. But it's about the dam is about that big, so it really backs up the water. Nobody's seen it. I don't see how anybody who's doing any kind of inspection in the area. So my concern is that I'm wondering if there's been a change in the priority of the board as to what should be done as far as landscape maintenance and how they're to be supervised and what should be, who should be doing what, because it's going downhill and it's not a slow turtle-like travel.
Thank you, George. Mr. Operations Manager, would you like to comment on any of that?
Yes. Then it gets on the recorder. First of all, Mr. Ashcamp, thank you for your comments. As to the silt fencing, there are several different contracts going on. Some silt fence was removed in front of Timberwood Preserve. There are still silt fence around some of the inlets on Griffin Drive, and that is for the upcoming work this Saturday for grading the shoulders of Griffin Drive from Gateway Boulevard up to the power easement. We've been trying to do that for the last month. But due to the rains and the conditions, it's not been feasible. But I got word this afternoon they will be doing that operation. They have to bring the sod lower than the edge of the pavement for drainage for the county. So the silt fence are required because we're still grading in that area. But we are after both contracts with WCI and our contract with PMI to remove those when the areas get approved. As far as the pine straw over the stumps, I concur that's happening, and we'll look into that as far as the stump removal and things, who's assigned to take care of that. Regarding the swale by the bank, I met yesterday with the WCI contractor and engineer, and we brought that same subject up to them. Actually, there's 2 locations, and they need to excavate that so that it connects with that, remove the blockage, so it'll come back down and drain to the inlet. So there are 2 areas in that vicinity that we noted with them yesterday morning, and they are starting grading the shoulders, they being WCI and their contractor Ajax and their subcontractors, to address that under their contract for the road rehab. And in regards to the overall landscaping, maybe Mr. Hushkamp's not aware, we're trying to engage with a landscape architect to come up with a conceptual plan, what to do with all the common areas within Gateway this year, and then the following year to implement actual improvements. So, and you're absolutely right as far as the some of the plantings lacking things, and I think I covered most of that, I hope.
Well, I don't agree with some of the things you said. It was, in order to take care of the dam that was up there.
Pull the
all
microphone closer to you, please.
To take care of the dam that was up there, the only thing somebody needed to do is get out there with a rake and rake the thing out of the middle of the pine. Somebody, nobody sees it. It's dumped there by Mainscape, and it's been there for like 6 months now, 5 or 6 months. Nobody looks. You see this when it does rain, and it did the other day. In fact, the other day, the water was almost up to the sidewalk between those 2 places because of this dam made by the pine straw. Somebody's not looking.
Thank you, George.
Excuse me, I'd like to comment if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, please.
I'd like to also have a few words on this, George. Thank you for your input. First of all, I don't think this stale landscape is a feature of just 2016. I think our landscapers, it was only a year ago that we had Mainscape at the podium. We were in the process of renewing their contract for 3 years, and it was made very clear to them, at least by me, that the landscape had been stale for a number of years. I totally agree with you about the overabundant use of pine straw. I don't like it. I think it's cheap, and I think the bigger discussion I think we need to have is to do with accountability. It was only 2 weeks ago that we were discussing our new prospective organization chart for this district going forward, and the question arises as to who is actually managing that contractor. Is it, we hired a facilities manager, originally a recreation manager, now a facilities manager. Is Anthony the interface with Mainscape, or is it L? Who is actually the day-to-day contact?
It's L. Harris.
Okay, so she is still responsible for landscaping under you, as of today?
Yes.
Not Anthony, is that correct?
Correct.
And the question then arises, are the terms of Mainscape's contract being adhered to, according to some of the comments made by George? Are there areas where we need to bring them back to heel and say, hang on, you're just not providing the services we've contracted you for?
And I think that's a very valid point, that we need to address that with them. But in regards to, if I understood you correctly, your perception that Mainscape a year ago was to sweeten up the landscaping or enhance it, they haven't been given that approval by our landscape committee, and we've done pockets in certain areas.
Right.
Due to budget constraints and waiting on this design and that process.
I think that that's another good point you raise, and that is the question of what is the extent of the authority of the landscape committee You know, is there, in their minds, is the mission to focus on the master plan and the upgrading, the land architects and all that? Or is it actually to set new standards and recommend to the board new standards over and above the existing contract for regular maintenance? If it's not clear, we need to clarify that.
Okay, maybe we'll bring that up to them at their next meeting. But currently, what they've been doing is when Elsie's an area that's in need of refurbishment, she brings that to them. We talk about those areas and make recommendations. Just as we've worked with them on the median landscaping further up on the north end, and on irrigation issues, and then working with the landscape architect at the next meeting that they have.
Okay, thanks. So are you of the opinion that the situation that George is describing is within the terms of Mainscape's current contract, or are they actually meeting their contract as of now, or do you think we can improve within that contract?
I think there's room for improvement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just one second. Any other board members have comments on this issue? Thank you very much. Mr. Manager?
Yes, we have Mr. Gephardt, and it's a non-agenda item, retain Scott Connell.
Good afternoon, Bob Gephardt from Pelican Preserve, and I'm here speaking for myself today. I've recently become aware that Mr. Connell has resigned. I know we have a new organizational structure coming up, and speaking for myself, he is the fourth operations manager that I've had the pleasure of dealing with here. And I apologize if this is something that's already been discovered and all that's new to me. And what I'm asking is, in our reorganized gateway management structure, I employ the board to try and find a way to retain his expertise in this new organization. And I don't know if that's a practical thing or not, but he's just too valuable a resource to me personally to just say goodbye to him without at least speaking on his behalf and trying to find a way to make him fit in the new organization. So thank you.
Bob. Mr. Manager, do you or Scott have any comment on that issue?
I think, Scott, I understand the role, the business that Scott's going into, and there are probably opportunities that Gateway could benefit from his new venture. Certainly, in some of our other districts, I plan on considering Scott for the services he offers, but those are smaller districts that might have big projects, but they're not, they don't have the staff that, or the resources that Gateway has. So we haven't really thought about it from Gateway's position, but I'm not opposed to it. I'm a fan of Scott and what he can do, and Severn Trent's very sorry to be losing him.
Would this be an appropriate time to ask the district manager what his plans are for replacing Scott?
Let's put that off until later in the meeting.
And would Scott be willing to work on a consulting basis if asked?
Possibly.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Bob. Mr. Manager?
Okay, Mr. Ed Tinkle, and it's a non-agenda item.
Ed Tinkle, Bend Pine Drive. I've got a couple of things, but first, want to comment on what was said earlier along Gateway Boulevard across from the bank. I agree with Scott and I agree with George both. The issue is that there are 3 places along that line that if you go and look at the original Gateway Boulevard plans, that area is to slope from the north to the south, and there's one inlet that's right about the point where the wall digresses toward the lake. The Gateway Greens wall digresses. There's a huge catch basin there. All that water is supposed to flow down in there. There are at least 3 mounds of dirt that over time have built up and created 3 distinct and separate dams along that way. Add to it that there is no curb along Gateway Boulevard in that area, and every bit of water off of Gateway Boulevard, including at the intersection of the bank, comes flying across there, sheet flowing, and it's a mess. Then to compound the mess, which gets into what George was talking about, is these people that like to put trees and landscaping in drainage areas need their head examined. but it is what we've got right now. But the issue is that could solve it is stop putting any mulch, any pine straw, or anything around those trees where they set in the profile of the V-ditch. Because I can tell you where they're gonna end up. They're gonna end up down there on the grading of the pipe or of the inlet, and they're gonna clog it up. So all you're gonna do is back it up and dam it up anyway. But that's an area that it's just too daggone tight to have both a landscape buffer, like we have along the road, meet the setback of the highway requirements, and not have it interfere in the drainage swale. The big solution would be to go in there and pipe it from Gateway Greens Drive all the way down, and then you'd have it solved. But it'd probably cost you about $250,000. So you're probably gonna wanna deal with swales, but I think the big thing is that WCI and their road improvement project, since we're inheriting the landscaping, that should not go unaddressed by them and untouched in their construction project of the road, and maybe they will. The same thing applies north of Gateway Greens Drive where they put in the new sidewalk. There must be 50 to 100 feet of that sidewalk that is underwater every time it rains. So it's, I don't know what their basis of elevation finding was or fact finding was, but you need a bridge to get across several sections of those. And in fact, people divert out into the road, and that's not good at all. So anyway, we got to watch this drainage around here, especially in light of what's happened in the last month with all this rain. It's really showing up like a sore thumb all over the community. Another item, I don't know if Danny's going to talk about this, but the Ponds Group is continuing working, and one of the things that we indicated when we were talking about the standards, in fact, the exhibit, was getting these DOs, the development orders, and the South Florida Water Management District documents on all of our ponds. I am pretty sure that Holmontes, that you entered into a sub-agreement with, is having difficulty, let's say at best, finding documents in Lee County. And from best I can get from Rick Brylansky, he's indicated something to Danny, and I don't want to steal Danny's thunder, but the only way I see this is going to improve is somehow, some way, we're going to have to get a delineation of what they simply cannot find, and it appears what they cannot find is that Johnson did years ago. I think a letter on behalf, or from the CDD, signed by Scott, Cal, Bill, somebody, telling Johnson, produce the documents. Produce the documents. They've got microfilm, they've got that type of stuff on this stuff, they can pull those things out. But we need those documents. Yeah.
We contracted with Holmontes. Danny, are you going to help me out here?
I can probably give an update.
Thank you.
We received a CD disc today of what they do have. They've been in contact with Johnson multiple occasions, and Rick Berlansky personally called Andy Tilton of Johnson Engineering this week. So I think we'll give them through middle next. They are working on it. Johnson is working on it. It's just it's an archive, so we're seeing what they have. So before we go and send that out, I don't think we're at the point where we need to at this point. So Johnson is working on it.
These are the DOs that were supposed to be, my words, easily looked at and brought up to date. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, and we knew that there would be some that are easy, and they have those. They have those. They've summarized those, and they've provided us a disc with the copies of all of those. This is for that maybe 20% that they didn't have access to. They're actually working to get those. So it's that last little bit that we're talking about.
20% is not, in my judgment, little.
When you compare it to 80%, the glass is 80% full there.
Danny, is there a charge from Johnson?
No, I think if it got to the point where it was really going to be an effort from them, Johnson would come back and say, we can't do it unless we're paid, and they have not come back to do that. They have in the past done that, but they have not in this case.
If you remember, Bill, we're attaching all the DOs to the pond standards document as an appendix, and the idea is to try and build that knowledge. And you're saying we'll get 80% of the way there?
Yes, and the CD came in today, so I cannot even tell you what all information is, because there's a lot there that has to now be compiled. What they've done is, they've done a summary in an Excel spreadsheet, but that, that just kind of touches the surface. We need to actually look at each one personally and say, is it a 25% requirement? Do they require rows? Drill into it a little bit more, but,
Danny, I'd like to, while you're standing there, and this is for Tony as well, Ed's made a point here about the WCI sections being turned over to the county. We are going to be accepting the landscaping part of that post-turnover. And the requirement, the agreement between the county and WCI, we have nothing to do with that.
Correct.
In terms of what WCI is required to do before turnover. What if we don't like what we're left with in terms of landscaping? What's our recourse at that point?
Yeah, right now, there isn't, there's a form of an agreement that's out there. That's the one that was agreed to as far as the concept. So everyone would go forward with this process of the district improving its roadway segments and WCI improving it. And the agreement really doesn't get signed or operative until such point in time as Lee County is the owner of the roads. Whether or not we can then, in the meantime, if we can talk to Lee County about would they require this additional level of drainage system in order to accommodate landscaping, or would we then be able to tell Lee County that for this segment, we're concerned about accepting landscaping maintenance responsibility, but then they may say, fine, we may take everything down. I mean, that might be their.
Well, here's the, exactly.
That might be their response is fine, it'll be our road, we'll do whatever we want to.
Right, but we're responsible for the landscaping, and if.
Well, that'd be under the agreement, and once again, the agreement isn't yet been signed because they don't own the roadway segment. The agreement in concept has been approved by all the boards, and in substance has been. So we'd have to go back and rework that agreement, if we.
Yeah.
That's my recollection of the concept.
Rod, there's another issue here. Lee County has got as much, in fact, more skin in this game than we do. They've got a road to protect,
The
and
integrity
that
of the road.
drainage, last two rain events we had, the 4-inch and the 5-inch, the water has entered onto the pavement. It's gone onto the pavement.
Okay.
Now, I wish, maybe what I need to do is get a picture of it and send it to Randy Searchy, or just take Cecil out and show it to him,
Got it on
and say,
my way.
get this
Yeah,
fixed, because it is a drainage issue. The plans are as clear as can be. The ground was to slope from north to south
Right.
and go into an inlet, and it just isn't getting there right now because of all the debris and all the dirt over the years has just plugged up that whole swale. But that's not the only place.
Time out.
Yeah.
Is the mission to get our roads turned over to Lee County, yes or no?
Yes.
And-
Ours and theirs, I hope.
Pardon?
Ours and theirs, I hope.
Oh,
WCI too.
What I'm hearing makes me think that there are some issues that are going to interfere with that if we're not careful. Who's there? Who?
WCI's. Their plans address these drainage problems. When you put together plans, and I don't know if you had a chance to look at the turnover plans, the detail on the roads and the engineering on the roads, and I think Scott will back me up, was pretty daggone good.
I saw it.
was pretty
I thought
good.
It was wonderful.
But the detail on the drainage was minimal, especially where it had to do with slopes.
Does somebody need to talk to WCI about this issue?
I don't know if Scott has or not, I don't know.
Yesterday during the biweekly construction meeting, the Holmontez engineer that's doing the inspection is aware of those drainage issues that we were talking about earlier, and was to look at them yesterday afternoon and address those up and down their corridor. So yes, they are aware of it.
So the big picture is that we're turning the roads over, and unless we're able to influence things that are going on between WCI and the county, we're just going to accept them as is, as turnover, and then we look after landscaping.
Well,
Whatever we accept is as is, right?
Well,
We're gonna have to
I
plan
think
it
it's a little
right.
more than that, because to the best of my knowledge, the Holmontez engineer, Nicole Monahan, has been in touch with Lee County DOT.
Okay.
She used to be employed by them, so she knows Randy Searcy and all the rest.
Okay.
So she knows and understands the criteria, and is looking to get that completed.
Okay.
So back then, I guess we just wait for Johnson. It was, the word was getting back to me that Johnson was not communicating